first speaker, Rana Zaher. I hope I pronounce well her name.
Yeah, good enough. Hi, Claudia.
Thank you. Hi. So you are going to give your talk on patterns amidst entropy, a quantitative investigation into the development of sculptural tradition and stylistic motifs in portal lions of Iron Age Syro-Anatolia. So please, if you are ready, you can start.
Of course. Just a second.
Yes. We can see everything. So
yeah.
Just one thing, you can click on the bar in the bottom of your page. You can see hide, the hide button, right. Yeah, just click on the hide button.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, that's better. Thank you.
Is this fine?
Perfect.
Oh,
you
because
can. Yeah. You need to go to full share. Yes.
Perfect. Yes. Okay.
Now
perfect.
we see it. Perfect.
We can start. Okay. Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for who is attending, and thank you, Claudia, for chairing this session. The following presentation outlines a section of my research that delves into investigating the stylistic and technological development of Syro-Anatolian portal lions in the Iron Age. So without further ado, let's start. Today, I'll be focusing on a part of my methodology that utilizes the deconstructed physical attributes of Syro-Anatolian portal lions as a means of investigating and better understanding the style, design, dating, and development of this theme of sculpture. Since this research is still a work in progress, I propose we treat it as an exploratory journey into better appreciating the importance of the smallest of elements that make up the whole of this presentation's sculptural case studies. In the upcoming slides, I'll be briefly going over the style and dating schemes of Syro-Anatolian sculpture, the status of portal lions in the sculptural repertoire of Iron Age, Neo-Hittite, and Aramaean city-states, and my quantitative approach into trying to better situate the style and date of two very important examples of lion in imagery. Research into Syro-Anatolian sculpture of the Iron Age has been long-standing and important, and has resulted in the construction of a generalized timeline of stylistic development based not only on visual analysis, but also on historical sources, of course. To place it simply, dating of Syro-Anatolian sculpture relies on two key events: the development of Neo-Hittite and Aramaean city-states during the onset of the first millennium BCE, which ushered in an iconic local sculptural program, and the gradual Neo-Assyrian military encroachment into the Syro-Anatolian region, which eventually resulted in the annexation of every city-state, one after another, until the whole area was under Neo-Assyrian domination. This in turn promoted a growing Assyrianizing and Assyrian array of sculptural production, while local production seemed to dwindle to a halt by the 8th century BCE. So the formula has so far been very simple. The more local a sculptural piece looks, the most likely it tends towards the earlier part of the first millennium BCE. And the more Assyrianizing elements it displayed, the more probable it was placed closer to the Assyrian annexation of Syro-Anatolia. But we still have not delved so deep into understanding the distinct themes of Syro-Anatolian sculpture, their design, or individual stylistic development. This has prompted me to question whether we can isolate and measure the development of certain themes of Syro-Anatolian sculpture, based on the proposition that certain themes could have developed and evolved at different paces. Such a notion has been hinted by various scholars. In fact, Ekrem Akurgal, while proposing his periodization schemes for the Syro-Anatolian sculpture, one of the first, noted that the visual characteristics of certain lion sculptures remained unchanged during these early and middle phases. Now, whether Akurgal was right or wrong in such an assessment, this prompted me to commence my research into investigating the stylistic development of the lion in image, starting with portal lions. Portal lions are one of the longest-standing sculptural features found in ancient Western Asia and North Africa. First recorded in the 3rd millennium BCE, as we see here from two examples from Egypt and Eridu, The freestanding or architectonic sculptures are iconic apotropaic guardians that decorated portals and gates of temples, palaces, and cities. Here we have two second millennium examples from Boğazköy and from Tel Hermal in Mesopotamia. Today, we focus mostly on the portal lines of Iron Age Syro-Anatolia, which proliferated as a staple of Neo-Hittite and Aramaean urban planning and proved to be an indispensable architectonic feature within their gate and portal structures. In order to emphasize this proliferation, I have presented in this map a preliminary plotting of portal lines across Western Asia during the Bronze and Iron Ages. While at the same time, we cannot rule out possibilities of new portal lines that have still not been excavated that would otherwise alter the plotting of this map, we can still notice where the frequency of accumulation presides, in an area roughly designated within southeastern Anatolia and northern Syria. Now, portal lines, like many examples of Syro-Anatolian sculpture, have had a very bad record of contextual data. In other words, almost all have been discovered ex situ, or have been excavated during a time when no commitment was granted towards careful contextual documentation. That is why in our generalized timeline, we relied a lot on verbal stylistic analysis in order to determine the dating of a sculptural specimen. However, there is one example of a portal line that had been recently excavated that did indeed possess contextual data, albeit still also a work in progress in its assessment. In 2011, the portal line of Tel Tayinat was discovered perfectly intact. I have thus used it as a main case study in my preliminary quantitative stylistic assessment, and not only because it had presented contextual data, but because by doing so, it had created a sort of stylistic dating conundrum. Let's explore this conundrum a little more. Through analyzing the archaeological layers which the Tayinat portal line was discovered, a tentative dating for the possible use of the sculpture was deduced by the excavators to be sometime during the mid-9th and possibly as far back as the 10th century BCE, the early Iron II. Going back to our timeline, this would designate the Tayinat line as a local product of the Syro-Anatolian region. Now, the Tayinat line has a sculptural sibling of almost exact design. The double-line column base at Tayinat was uncovered by the Syrian Hittite expedition in the 1930s, one of originally two column bases flanking the entrance of a temple on the west central area at Tayinat. The excavators of the Syrian Hittite expedition assigned the double-line column base as part of the final phases of the temple, dated post-Neo-Assyrian takeover, and dating it to the first half of the 8th century BCE. But in my opinion, they never considered that it might have been reused from the previous Neo-Hittite occupation period of the temple. Instead, they relied on the base's Assyrianizing features to bolster this claim. So here on our timeline, that places the double-line column base squarely in the Assyrian provincial period. Subsequently, all scholarly works citing the Tayinat double-line column base to this day speak of how it was of Assyrian or Assyrianized make. Now, let's assume that both sculptures were contemporaneously created. I wanted to design a framework that would allow me to better situate the Tayinat portal line and its counterpart on this timeline. They were created during the autonomous reign of the Neo-Hittite rulers of ancient Kunalua at the beginning of the Iron II, or were they part of the new Assyrian provincial refurbishment of the fallen city-state when Kunalua was converted into the Assyrian provincial center of Konalia? Are they a local Syro-Anatolian, and in our site's case, Neo-Hittite product, or can they be classified as of Assyrian or Assyrianizing make? Based on this above question, my investigation started, and here's where I developed my methodology to tackle this issue. Now, it's certainly not a first. I was mainly inspired by previous deconstructive approaches, such as, to our left, Michael Rowe's stylistic analysis of the Persepolis sculptures, or more recently, here shown on the right, Amy Ganzel's machine learning approach in determining regional variations within the female figures in Iron Age ivories. While I derive a lot from these two important studies, my research differs, wherein it is one that utilizes specimens spread over various sites and are not constrained to one or similar find spots. I wanted to share with you a basic rundown of my approach. First, I needed to understand the anatomy of a portal line. We do not have anything concrete regarding this, so I had to start doing it from scratch. And so I used my main case study in order to try to figure that out. The following annotated figure shows how I classified the physical anatomy of the Tainat portal line into 15 broad anatomical categories. Unfortunately, I cannot point out on this, but we can mainly see, for instance, you have like the mane, the ruff, the eyes, the tongue, etc. They ended up to be 15 basic main categories. Next, I took these 15 categories and I subdivided them into more detailed classifactory attributes, which totaled 40. I'll give an example here so we can look at it more closely. Here I give the example, for instance, of the category mane, which has 4 attributes: the main form, the main strand organization, how the strands are organized on this mane, the main strand form, each individual strand, how it looks like as shaped, and the main strand decoration, or whether it is decorated or not, in fact. To further study these classificatory criteria, I needed comparative samples. And so out of the hundreds of examples of portal lines I had cataloged, I ended up choosing the 17 which had the best photographic representation within my database. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot. I wish I could have used more, but this is all I had for now. From these 17 specimens, I had chosen 3 that were outside the Iron Age Syro-Anatolian spectrum, but which needed to be added for proper comparative analysis. And these specimens were the late Bronze Age portal lines of Boğazköy and Alacahyuk from Central Anatolia, and the new Assyrian portal line from Nimrud. I then illustrated all 18 portal line specimens in frontal and profile views, as I was trying to hit all important angles of each sculpture that capture the proposed anatomical attributes. Here I only give 6 because all 17 don't fit, but I hope you can tell the profile versus frontal view of each example. And with these illustrations finalized, I went ahead and applied a deconstruction in order to arrange a typological classification of attributes that would be the basis of my data collection. For instance, here we have the example again of the deconstruction regarding the main category. As we focus on the bottom left, let's say, the main strand form attribute, we see that I classified this attribute into 4 clusters. We have the hook-shaped, the leaf, or what I call now the flame-shaped, the spiral-shaped, and in certain examples where there were no strands at all. Other examples from the deconstruction process looked something like this. Here I display attributes that differ from, for instance, on the upper left, there's the whisker line count. On the upper right, there's the nose form. The bottom left, there's the head to body proportion. And to our bottom right, we have the tongue length. We can see also that each attribute clusters are based on similarity comparisons between the specimens. This raw data based on category, attribute, and cluster number was then tabulated as viewed on the left. It looks scarier than it actually is, but this tabulation was then utilized with the numbering of each cluster created by the differentiation of each attribute to construct a binary similarity matrix, here seen on the right. And these 2 tables eventually allowed me to produce the following graph, which showcased basically which portal lines were most similar to the Tainat line based on all the attributes that we had deconstructed. Based on this graph, here are some insights that I interpreted. Now, first of all, of the 17 specimens taken from the following sites plotted on this map, 4 of the 5 top similar portal lines to the Tainat example are all found within the direct vicinity of the Ammu and Afrin valleys, and include the specimens from Ain Dara, Zinjirli, and most similar, the example from Hama. However, even the example most similar to that of Tainat, the Tainat portaline, had only 19 similar attributes out of 40, which is less than half. This in and of itself is a revealing statistic and says much about the unique design of the Tainat line. However, to delve into this, we need a whole other presentation. So I'll leave that here for now. Of the top 5 specimens, the Nimrud portaline comes in 4th place. It was not a surprising result, honestly. The Tainat double line column base had been compared to it before, and it in fact played a role in bolstering the Assyrianizing nature of some line and imagery across Syro-Anatolia. The Nimrud specimen, in my opinion, does not prove any sort of Assyrianizing characteristics of the Tainat line, because in more ways than one, we might propose a reciprocal theory. What if it was the Nimrud line that was inspired from examples in Syro-Anatolia? Various studies and publications have already started questioning the unidirectionality of previous assumptions regarding cross-culturalism between the central Neo-Assyrian Empire and the peripheral Syro-Anatolian states, stemming back sometimes to the reign of Tiglath-Pileser I at the dawn of the Iron Age. And to me, what is in fact more interesting in this case is the date of the Nimrud portaline, which is evident by an inscription of King Ashur-Nasir-Pal II on its flank, not to mention the fact that this portaline, along with a few other less intact copies, are part of Ashur-Nasir-Pal's large-scale building program for the palatial complex at Kalkhu, which was erected around mid-9th century BCE. So the deconstructive and quantitative nature of classifying and clustering the attribute typologies of the portaline specimens aided in showcasing some interesting revelations, mainly that the most similar specimens to the Tainat portaline lay in its direct vicinity, even though separated by chronological factors. However, I still did not stop here, because I truly believe that the motifs, the elements, and the physical attributes in themselves have more to tell. Now, normally, the approach of deciphering the style or date of Syro-Anatolian portalines utilizes various stylistic elements that have long been classified as markers that tell us whether a sculpture can be older or more recent than others. For example, we more or less have an accepted chronological typology, for instance, for the curvature of the claws, the rendering of the hind legs, the extension of the tongue. I wish I can point this out, but it's okay. The orientation of the ears, the presence or lack thereof of cheek palmettes, which are musculature that is stylized to look like what Ekrem Akurgal termed as palmettes on the cheek. And with all of the above that I've stated, the Tainat portaline clearly registers in the late range. But still, I have also found portaline examples that break those rules nonetheless. So how much of a chronological dependence do we have on these markers? And then come the strands of the mane, which is also considered a marker. I'll explain with an example from the Ain Dara complex, which sustained a long period of sculptural development and replacement, now kind of in the ballpark between 1200 BCE and the 7th century BCE, and has recorded a total of 76 portalines, line protomes, and carved line orthostat reliefs. It was noticed by the excavators that the older the lines were, the more their main hair strands resembled a hook shape, which we can see on the upper right side as an illustration. This type of mane is also attested in older Bronze Age Hittite sculptural examples. The more recent they were, the more their main strands resembled flame shapes, which is also found in the later Assyrianizing and Assyrian portalines. Here, the Tel Tainat line scores the early range with flying colors. But should this reveal a chronological factor, or is it more of a local trait in this region in the Iron Age? To investigate, I took this a little further by creating a set of attribute pattern formulae for the entire mane, strand, and decoration based on my attribute typological structure, as a means to try to prove the local nature of the Tainat line's mane. What we can notice from the above clusters are 3 central constants within the specimens. The Tel Tainat portaline, along with its closest examples from Ain Dara and Hama, share all 4 clusters of every attribute within the main category, and form the following main attribute pattern formula on this slide from left to right. A shoulder length mane that cuts off before reaching the abdomen, whose strands are organized in gridded registers, which are of hook-shaped form that lacks decoration. So all three of these portal lines have this pattern formula. They're also closely followed by the Boğazköy, Maraş, and Arslan Tepe examples, who share 3 of the 4 clusters with them. If you look at the examples underneath the red line, I also noticed that the samples known to be Assyrian or provincial Assyrian portal lines followed a different formula and were unassociated with the latter attribute formula. Most telling is, of course, the iconic Assyrian mane that stretches onto the abdomen of the lion, as well as the flame-shaped mane strands that are decorated with incisions. It thus can be surmised that the shoulder-length, hook-shaped, register, undecorated mane design might have been a local Syro-Anatolian tradition, where it proliferated throughout the area well into the late 9th century BCE. The portal line of Tell Ta'inat seems to fit well into this local range. Another interesting pattern formula is the bulky head to body to legs proportion. I need to fix this name. Most of the Neo-Hittite and Aramaean style portal lines, as you can see to our left, from our 17 specimens, follow a sculptural tradition recorded in the typological attributes that include having a bulky body, a big head in proportion to the body, bulky big paws, and bulky forelegs and hind legs. Specimens that fit this formula included the Ta'inat, Taindara, Arslan Tepe, Hama, and both Sinchirli portal lines. Assyrian and Assyrianizing examples, here attested with the Nimrud and Arslan Tash lines, do not fall into this formula, as they showcase a slimmer body with a smaller head in proportion to it, with longer, slender forearms and legs, and smaller paws in proportion to the rest of the body.
Sorry, Rana.
Yes.
I don't want to bother you, but we are kind of short of time. We have 8 minutes left, so if we want to have at least 5 minutes for the Q&A, so just if you can go quicker to the conclusion.
Yes, definitely.
Yes,
definitely. I'll definitely go quicker. I'm done.
Okay.
Actually, I need a couple of minutes.
Okay, no worries at all. Go on.
So basically, what can we establish from all of this? At least for now, I can more comfortably argue for a local sculptural tradition within the Ammo and Afrin valleys, of which the Ta'inat portal line and double line column base are part of. If we are to apply this to our established timeline, we can argue for a production date prior to the Neo-Assyrian annexation. Indeed, this research is still a long way from coming to fruition, but I believe presenting the following example of how we can collect, quantify, and typologize the elements of portal lines can be of help in better understanding stylistic influences, evolution, and dating of these fascinating sculptures. Can we find more patterns amidst all this entropy? Can a coherent typology of elements, motifs, and attributes help link common workshop origins? Would it help in better visualizing and pinpointing cross-cultural influences? All I know is that my work is far from done. At the moment, I'm growing my portal line catalog, hoping to add more and more specimens to my typologies. And at a time when more and more portal lines are subject to destruction and illegal trafficking, we need to work faster and better in documenting and understanding them for posterity. I thank you so much. I've added my email and Twitter handle if we don't have time to do with all the questions, or if anyone would like to connect and chat about all this. Thank you all for listening in.
Thank you, Rana. This was an amazing presentation. So
thank you. Sorry I took longer.
No worries at all. So just we wait. There are going to be some questions in the public chat. You know that there is just a little time lag between StreamYard and Hybrida, so we wait a little bit. But in the meantime, I just would like to make more congress, because the pictures were great, absolutely amazing, and also the drawings. And
thank you.
Yes, so yeah, no question yet, but I have mine, so I will start. And your methodology was really, really strong, I guess. You explained it very well. And I was wondering how it works from a computer-based point of view. If you use Excel or different kind of programs to use to point all these categories and make your conclusions and clusters.
Yeah. Okay. So I am an archaeologist. I'm an illustrator, but I am not a data scientist. But I like to organize data. And for this first trial, which is really a first trial, I used Excel to do all of this. However, I am for my doctoral research, I'm currently talking to a couple of data scientists who find it better to create an algorithm if I am to place more specimens in this, because even with 17, 17 sounds like such a small number, but it really wasn't, and it took a lot of work. So sort of machine learning algorithm, sort of like what Ganzel did, is the prospect of this methodology, definitely.
Okay, thank you. And yes, I agree with you that we as archaeologists sometimes find difficult to create this kind of machine learning methodologies.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
definitely.
it would be great. I also have the same difficulties with my research. So yeah,
exactly. Yeah, but
I get your point.
Good. It's always good to ask for help. We should know
absolutely.
that we can't do everything.
So let's look on the public chat if there is something. Not yet, but I have another question, because if you might remember, I work at Carchemish. So
yes,
yeah.
I think we have met. Okay.
Yeah, we had
a
couple of years ago. Yes.
Yes,
and,
exactly.
And at Carchemish, we find so many lion fragments, like they are discarded everywhere in the site, unfortunately from pits, surface, and we don't have any proper archaeological context, and it's difficult to date them. So maybe, yes, if you maybe you didn't have the time yet to compare the cluster on the Tainat, Amma, and the other side, to the western side of Syria, to the Carchemish side. So if you can add anything to that, or
I'll add it very briefly, because for now I only used one Carchemish example, which was a statue base. Yeah, so it's a type of portaline, but not exactly. Unfortunately, I don't know why someone was very angry at the Carchemish portalines. They're completely destroyed. But as recently as end of 2019, before the COVID, I went to the Anatolian Museum of Civilizations, and I got access to the backyard garden, where unfortunately many of the Carchemish fragments are placed, and I was able to document them very closely, and hopefully these will soon be added, and I'll be able to kind of see if I can get a sense from them, even as fragments, to help with this algorithm. So yeah, there's definitely, it's unfortunate, because they are some of the best examples, I'm sure, but maybe by using the small elements of them, we can understand them better, and maybe a machine learning algorithm would help us understand better by maybe generating possibilities of what they might have looked like based on comparing them with other samples.
Okay, thank you so much. And yes, definitely, this will be like the next step of your